Welcome to Sidebar with Judge Dan Winslow. I am Dan Winslow, formerly of the Massachusetts Trial Court, now with the New England Legal Foundation in Boston. Sidebar is a show about interesting topics at the intersection of business and law. And today, I got to tell you, we have one of the most interesting topics from one of the most interesting people I've ever crossed paths with, and that is Bill Hudak, who knew me when I had hair. That's how long Bill Hudak has known me. And Bill Hudak was one of these guys that I would sit next to in law school so I could make sure I got the answers right on the test. Bill, welcome to Sidebar.
Well, thanks a lot for that, Dan. Yeah, a little time goes by, 40 years ago or so, and we've changed quite a bit, and the world's moved on quite a bit.
Well, everything
Glad
has
to be on the
changed.
show. Thanks for inviting me.
Everything has changed, Bill, except your hairline. You look exactly the same as you did when you were in your 20s. So good for you, man. I gotta find the secret because I surely didn't learn it. So, the reason I asked you on the show, Bill, other than the fact that you're brilliant and interesting, which I've known for 40 years, is you've now pivoted your focus in your career to what I think is a really interesting and topical space and very important space. So why don't we, before we dive into it, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell us about, who you are and what you do. And if you have a website, feel free to share it. We'll put it on the screen for the audience.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dan. I don't know that I'm that interesting. I've kind of lived a pretty storied life, a pretty happy, successful life. I've had my own practice for the better part of the 40 years. I started out of law school with a couple of big firms in downtown Wall Street, New York, and in Boston. I could be making millions of dollars, but that was never my focus in life. So I pretty much had my own practice during the course of that time in Saugus, where I focused with helping just regular folks, people who needed help with anything they needed. A lot of concentration always on, family matters, wills, trusts, estates, helping people be prepared in their lives, make a lot of money, help them through bankruptcy if they had a bad thing. So it's all my whole focus and my whole life has been all about helping people make money. And, I had an opportunity in 2008 and 9. I didn't like the way some things were going, saw things going the wrong way. So I did actually run for Congress for, the better part of 4 years and just missed. But one of the things I learned in that process was I was there during the course of a lot of heated arguments about what's the best direction for medical care in this country, the whole Obamacare slash, Affordable Care Act. I was actually running the town halls because the congressman wouldn't do it. And I was focusing on the Social Security element and most importantly, the financial affairs of the country. That's what really drew me into it because heck, when we graduated from law school, the country had a $1 trillion debt. And by then, when my kids were about to graduate, it was more along the lines of 8 trillion. And I saw where it was being proposed, and man, was I worried about it. That's what motivated me. And I could foretell the future, I guess, unfortunately, because now we're 35 trillion. And that's kind of where I've been in most of my life, has been helping people through a lot of those struggles.
It's not just family money and national money. You've actually started focusing on individuals who are approaching retirement age, and I think probably because of some of the things you saw in your journey to public life. At least I know I did. For me, you get to see people close up and really get to feel the fear that people have as they start to approach retirement age, dependent entirely in many cases on Social Security, which may or may not, be there for people in their 20s and 30s. At least that's the fear. So, tell us what you started to do to, address some of these issues as to Social Security and retirement planning.
Well, I mean, a little frustrated with the political process. I decided that the best way to do things, the internet has grown, social media has grown. I think the best way to do things to help as many people as I can is to have some type of a social media following, grow this organically to both educate people in the best ways to deal with some of the struggles they're having, as well as give general advice. A lot of people in Social Security, you mentioned in particular, they don't really understand it. Biggest mistake people make is, oh my goodness, the government's going down. I better take it at 62, which is the worst thing for almost everybody. And so basically, it's focusing on the fact that 80% of people in America now, based on statistics, are just not ready for retirement, and they're worried about running out of money in retirement, and the world has changed. So it's really been I'm trying to help people be prepared for that give them answers and solutions when they find themselves unprepared. So it's a whole organic and holistic approach to making sure that retirement is for people what it's supposed to be, which is the time in their life to enjoy life, be financially secure, and spend the time with their families that we were told all along would be coming for us back when we were in grade school.
So, I'm probably one of your, great demographics, like, or maybe not. Maybe the time to start retirement planning is when you're in their 30s and 40s and younger. What do you say? When does this topic matter?
Well, in truth, it matters from the time you get started. I mean, people tend to put things off, but it is a lifetime commitment that you need to make. You get to the top of the stairs by taking the baby steps consistently from the time you start your first job, or you start your own entrepreneurial adventure, whatever the case may be. But the challenge that we have these days is that because of a lot of factors, the world is different today in 2024 than it was when our grandparents started this whole journey. I mean, Social Security was set up to be a safety net. It wasn't supposed to be the retirement plan. But back in the old days, someone would work for a company their whole lives and have a nice pension set up, and they would be all set and nice and stable. But because of the dramatic increases in cost, the complexity of our world, the internet, the fact that people jump from job to jobs, it's just not that way anymore.
I want to ask you
So
about,
it's really a matter of we're finding a lot of people just not ready.
right. So, as one of the 80% of the people who aren't ready, and so I get what you're supposed to do in your 20s and 30s, and climb every baby step all the way to the top of the stairs. So let's fast forward to the folks that are late 50s, early to mid 60s. All they've got saved up so far is Social Security, maybe a 401k with not enough to live on, obviously. That's not untypical, isn't it?
No, it's not. Or pretty much that's almost the standard. You're probably, we're in the latter end of the baby boom generation, and the baby boom generation, most of it is there already. I think statistically we have about 12,000 people turning 65 every day in this country now, and they aren't ready because they have not saved. And a lot of that was because the government policy as well as the corporate policies have changed, that people don't stay with jobs anymore. So you don't have that consistency of building, and everything was put off on people. We were supposed to start putting our money into IRAs and really load those 401ks up. But too many people didn't do it. They either put it off, or they didn't have the money, or they didn't really concentrate on it. So here we are now, and the question is what to do. And what I'm trying to do is develop for people an understanding of how they got to this, and to start being a little, even though it's late, there are some strategies and things you can do to start being ready. You may never get to the point where you can live the retirement you dream, but there are some things that can help soften the blow and get people comfortable to where they want to be.
And you have some of these things. You have a website, billhudak.com, right?
Yeah, that's right. I've also got a company. The name of my company is Absolute Freedom Network, Inc., but absolutefreedomnetwork.com or billhudak.com. They go to the same place. I've also got a blog site at absolutefreedomnetwork.blog. I am in the process possibly of doing a podcast, but those are the two main places people can go for information, particularly with regard to Social Security. I've written a couple of ebooks. One is on the basic do's and don'ts with Social Security. One of them is also on the reality of where people are in retirement these days, and some options for extra income in retirement that people just don't know about.
So let's not don't keep me in suspense, Bill. I mean, so you've done the work, you've posted on your company's website, and 80% or so of the folks aren't ready. Let's speak to those people. Like, here you are, folks. We're not going to judge you. You didn't do things in your 20s, 30s, and 40s that maybe you could have done and should have done. But here we are. You're coming to the end of your working life. You've got Social Security. You might have a little bit saved up in a 401k or a Roth IRA. Bill, what are some tips?
Well, it's really a holistic approach. You first of all have to look in the mirror. Every case is different, obviously, but the average person has to look in the mirror and basically focus on four different things I like to talk about. One is they have to be realistic about their expenses and downsize and eliminate as many expenses as possible. You may be living in a big house. Maybe it's time to downsize to a smaller house. There's a lot of talk about a lot of people are going to have to do that, maybe move in with their kids. So they've got to establish first and foremost a realistic expense level to eliminate all the unnecessary expenses in their lives. I did a lot of bankruptcy. I can help with a lot of ideas, but basically you've got to get your expenses under control and start only having things you need instead of things you want,
Yeah,
and
I
just
just want to
focus
speak to
life on what's important.
that. When I was a judge, we had for collections, if somebody had a judgment against them, they would be called before the judge, and the judge would assess whether or not they had the ability to pay. And it was amazing to me how people's orientation about their expenses and what's truly a necessity changes, with life. So, for example, back then, basic cable TV was like, $4, $8 a month, but the fancy HBO stuff was, $40, $50 a month. And, over 12 months, that adds up, especially if you're pinched for dollars. And yet people would insist that they needed the full package HBO because they just had to watch, whatever the show was that they had to watch. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you need to pay this judgment first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and but the thing people don't really realize, because too many people are afraid of the internet has just so many opportunities. You can buy some of these things for next to nothing, and get little things like sticks and Netflix and things that'll completely take that 230 or 40 or $50 cable bill every month off the table. And
Wow.
it's those little things you focus on first to get your expenses under control, and then you have to look realistically at preserving whatever money you do have and know the correct order to start taking withdrawals in money. I mean, people, I talked about Social Security, people jump right into Social Security at 62, which is the worst thing you can do. Sometimes it's better to start taking some withdrawals from a 401k, because what people don't understand about Social Security, it's an annuity. And it's an annuity that will pay you for life. So you don't need a lot of money to build that annuity for life. You need the time to let it grow and mature. And even the difference between your retirement age, your full retirement age, which is 66 or 67, depending on when you were born, and 70, that 3-year period is 8% a year. That's a 24% increase in what you will now be paid for the rest of your life, not even including the cost of living adjustments, which will also increase based on the larger thing. So sometimes it's a strategy of, when it comes to the income you do have and can expect, it's which one should you withdraw first? Where should you do it so that you can maximize the guaranteed annuity type monthly payout to pay those expenses that you've reduced in the first place? So those are the very conservative beginning strategies that everybody can employ before you get into some things that I also talk about.
And so those are two great strategies, and pretty straightforward. Do you actually have a checklist of the kinds of things people should consider? I mean, the example of looking at cable TV for Hulu or other kinds of cheaper cost or low cost alternative internet service, a great example that I might not have thought of.
Yeah, well, I haven't fully developed all of that yet. I frankly started my new business kind of moving on to this in the 1st of February. So we're about 6 months into it. I am expecting in the months to come, I am going to be creating a community specifically addressing this issue, so that I can connect people to each other all around the country, and even around the world if they want. It's going to be international in scope, hopefully at some point, so that it's not just me that's going to advise people what to do. It's so that people can talk to other people, and we can start holding hands and basically all benefiting from being involved in a common problem. And I think that's the only way you really are ever going to do this. Too many people just sit in their homes and they don't have any money, and they whine about how, I don't have any money, I can't go anywhere. But I think with the advent of the internet, and this is where the power is coming in, why things are so powerful, and I'm out there on social media, it's starting to promote putting together the types of groups and people. And I will be putting together mastermind groups of a lot of people I know that will be able to help give all these little nuts and bolts and answer individual questions on a person by person basis going forward.
You mentioned a couple of times, Bill, that age 62 would be like a really bad idea to take Social Security. But are there circumstances where starting Social Security benefits at an earlier age might make sense?
There are. I mean, for example, if you're a single person, it really doesn't matter. I think the first thing you look at, are you married or you're single? For a single person, if you start taking your Social Security at age 62, the only thing you want to worry about is if you are still working full time, they're going to claw that money back. So if you're making more than, say, $24,000 a year, every $2 you go over that 24,000, they claw back a dollar. So let's say you're making $44,000 a year, you're going to lose $10,000 off your Social Security, and it's going to, but you're locked in at that lower rate for life, which is basically a third or 30% less than if you wait to full retirement age. But single people is subject to that limitation. They can certainly take it at age 62, understanding that they're going to start losing money. In other words, they're going to win the gamble if they die before they're about 78 and 8 months. That's really the crossover point, that 15-year or so 16-year period where you actually make out more money. For most other people, it's really a matter of looking at whether you're married or not, or divorced. A lot of divorced people do not realize that they can get their Social Security based upon an ex-spouse. If they were married for 10 years and divorced, and let's say you were a secretary married to a rich doctor and you got divorced, well, you're much better off not taking it at 62. You can take it based on the ex-spouse's numbers and get a lot more money. So there are little strategies like that you basically need to look at whether you're single or married, whether you're working or not, and then look at things like the longevity you expect. If you're a family that lives into their 90s, I mean, statistically, 50% of people that are healthy couples at age 65, one or the other or both, are going to make it into their 90s. So you got to look at that. And a lot of it's run the numbers and pick the choices to when based on your particular circumstance. That's part of what my ebook's about. It's kind of giving you the tips and tricks when you get that, and you can get that at my website.
Now, you'd mentioned reducing expenses. Would relocation to a lower cost area be part of that strategy? For example, I'm moving to North Carolina shortly. I'll tell folks about that in detail later, but the cost of housing where I'll be living is 65% less than here in Boston. And the overall cost of living, aside from housing, is 35% less. I was actually blown away by the cost of, phone service where I'm going.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, there are a lot of reasons people relocate. A lot of people want to relocate naturally, especially from the Northeast or the colder climates to the warmer climates. But there's no doubt about that. Cost of living is a huge factor. A lot of people are even, a matter of fact, finding that they can move to the tropical islands of their dreams, the Philippines and other places, and live on $700 a month in first-class style in a much better climate. So there are a lot of them, a lot of places people can go and look at when they make it, subject to family and other issues that are important to them. But absolutely, that's probably the number one, because the cost of living, where you live, how much you spend, is obviously the biggest factor that's going to determine your regular monthly expense. And the lower you get those, the more whatever money you have lasts you that much longer.
Bill, you've just spun off like about 97 different pieces of wisdom here. So I do commend people to look at your website, billhudak.com. And what's the business website again? We'll put it up on the screen.
Oh, they're the same. AbsoluteFreedomNetwork.com. They both go to the same site. The blog website is AbsoluteNetworkFreedom.blog. It just gives some little other information and those types of things. But part of what those websites are doing at this point is also helping people to understand the other avenue that people really need to start changing their focus on. And that is, most people nowadays are not prepared financially. And so they need to start focusing their mind on making other additional sources of income, because that's really the key for most people that find themselves, 70% of people just don't have enough money. They're going to probably outlive their retirement. So just reducing expenses and learning how to adjust what isn't enough, and a lot of the jobs in today's world are going to go away. Retail is going to start getting smaller. The old joke about being a greeter at Walmart, even those jobs are going to start being wiped out by things like AI, artificial intelligence. But the internet is really an unbelievable source of ways people can make money, and they can do it living the passion that they really like. How many people out there stayed with a job they hated because they were just trying to make it to retirement, and they didn't do the thing they really wanted to do, whether it was playing the violin, being a gardener, all kinds of things. And the internet affords you, just like from Shark Tank, when you see all the people that are out there, it just affords people so many opportunities from home to make that extra income. And for most people, it doesn't take a lot. It might be $100 a week, or a couple $100, $500, $600, $1,000 a month. You can make that so easily on the internet if you're not afraid of it, and you start adopting the mentality of that's where the income is and that's where the future is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the other part that we didn't talk about yet today, which is to start building yourself an additional income from home and combining that with the reason you're retired in the first place. What is it you really want to do to give yourself a happy, fulfilled life? And so a lot of what I preach is a lot of different ways that people can do some of those things to enjoy their retirement years and live the passion that they missed out on. That's why I talk about Absolute Freedom Network. You know, I'm all about freedom in every aspect of your life, not just the financial, but also you know, to do the things that you want to do and enjoy the life that you've already missed out on.
That's fantastic. You mentioned that. I mean, there's so many online retailers that have partnership agreements where you can actually get a commission simply by promoting their products. So if your passion is fishing, align with some fishing retailers and do like everything about fishing gear or hunting or whatever. So that's brilliant advice.
Yeah, and
The
that's a simple thing. It's called affiliate marketing. You know, back in the year 2000, I actually started an affiliate as one of my entrepreneurial adventures. I actually started an affiliate marketing program, but it was very complicated in those days. You know, I was actually Jeff Bezos. I like to joke, stole my idea. He created Amazon. Amazon is nothing more than an affiliate marketing website where he created the platform and he allows anybody that wants to sell anything, sell stuff on his website. You can actually very easily go to Amazon's a perfect example, become an affiliate of Amazon. And just by referring people from your website or from your email or your link over to Amazon, you get paid every time someone goes shopping using your link. That's a very simple thing that's now very easy for anybody to do. You know, so that's a whole area called affiliate marketing, and there are a lot of other ones very similar that you know, a lot of companies like Shopify and you know, Instagram and places like that come up with all kinds of different ideas for people.
do you have any thoughts about Medicare? I know one of the aside from those early AARP cards that we would get when we were turning 60, then the next or maybe 55 it was, the next big sort of scary life milestone reminder from the government is when you start getting these solicitations about Medicare. Do you have any thoughts about Medicare and the pros and cons of different opportunities or paths there?
Well, you kind of get the way that the government and insurance companies work. Medicare is the standard. When you hit 65, unless you are with a company that's got some special program or you're a high level executive, you're kind of stuck with going to Medicare. The tricky part of it, and this is going to vary from state to state, but in Massachusetts, we happen to be very fortunate that if you understand how it works, and there are a few advisors, and I do refer people to certain people that are experts in this, because when I aged up myself into Medicare, I'm like, okay, I see all these ads. What do I do? Well, the truth of the matter is that based on income and having the right advisor to put you in the right spot, it can be it can take all of the problems and scary parts of Medicare off the table. Heck, I know I personally had some I'm very proactive. So if I see a potential problem with me, I happen to go to the doctor and beat it in advance. And I've run up some pretty heavy bills that Medicare and the supplements that I've been able to do have been lifesavers for me. So it's a lot of it's knowledge and information, how best to link the Medicare with the right Medicare supplement type of plan. You know, and I'm certainly not an expert on how to do the nuts and bolts, but I do have people that I refer to that, just like I did, put me right in it inside of a matter of an hour, got rid of all the guesswork out of what to do. And then it's like an insurance agency. There are people that are now building that niche to help people find the right Medicare, match them with their income level, their goals, their particular health without losing their doctors. So it's out there. You
Yeah.
know, it's just you can't, you have to just know where to go.
That's fantastic. And then the other concern that I had is about the Affordable Care Act. And you've had some views about the Affordable Care Act over the years, but to what extent does that statute, that program, have benefit for people that might want to be able to reduce cost of healthcare, or perhaps detriments that they should be mindful of?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question. And it's going to vary from state to state. Now, here in Massachusetts, it really made no significant difference because we already had, a matter of fact, the Affordable Care Act was somewhat modeled after the model that I believe was Governor Romney, who you know well, implemented way back before that ever came up. One of the biggest problems with the Affordable Care Act is it was too far-reaching, and it did some things that's one of the reasons why the country's going bankrupt and has run up a $35 trillion debt, because included in there was a takeover. It wasn't all about the Affordable Care Act. If you remember, I think that's the one Nancy Pelosi said, we have to read, you have to vote it in before we can see what's in it. And that's where they took over, the federal government took over the entire student loan process, which has caused enormous financial consequences that are far reaching. And the other problem is that states were so different and diverse that some states you lost your choice in every regard. You want to be careful of that in North Carolina in particular, because I'm also admitted to practice in North Carolina, and I've looked at the fact that you may only have one choice. And when you have one choice in America, what happens is when you supply and demand, if you got the only supply, you can demand more money, and that's what ends up happening. And that's why you see so many people around the country have lost their medical care. We're fortunate in Massachusetts because we got so many hospitals. We're such a high medical area, but most of the country, it's a big loser, and most of them is what's put it out of reach for people. And unfortunately, I can't solve that problem. I'd have been focused on it if I made it to Congress, but we're kind of dependent on really voting in the right people that are really focused on that if we're ever going to fix it.
Bill, we're coming to the end of our time here, believe it or not. Any last words of wisdom or pointers for advice for the people who are not well situated in their sort of as approaching their 50s and 60s?
Well, the first thing I would say is I don't want anybody out there to panic. I think what people need to do is they need to sit down, maybe with family, maybe with the proper advisors, and look realistically at their situation and not just on the financial end. Too many people worry retirement's all about money. Well, no, it's not. Retirement is the time in your life where you want to focus on your goals in life and your overall freedom. Because, if you're only focused on money and you're thinking negatively, that's going to follow you because you become what you think about all day long. So if you're panicking and you're worrying about money, you're going to always be worrying about money. If you start focusing your life on a positive mental attitude and focusing on exactly what you want, what are your real goals, what's going to make you happy, and start focusing on that first. Like I said, it might be a hobby, it might be your family, it might be travel. Then you back into that and say, you know what? If I get out there and start traveling all the time, how can I make some money from this? Well, from the internet, you can say, wow, I love to travel. I love to cruise. How can I make money as an affiliate person sending people on this cruise I went? How can I get out there for free on social media and just saying, hey, I went on this cruise. Why don't you come with me? We make some money. So I think people have just got to turn their attitude around from the negative, I'm retired, I'm bored, I don't have any friends, and get out there and live your life first, because the freedom in your life will be what you make it, and the money will follow if you then say, I'm doing something I love to do. And you may just be the life of the party because you love parties, so you can become a party host, for example, and you can start monetizing the things you love and live the life that you were meant to be. And you know what's going to happen too, Dan, is you're going to live a longer life, because the more active you are, the longer you live and the more healthy you are.
And the longer you live, the more
general advice I think what people should do.
Great advice, Bill. Great advice. And by the way, the longer you live, the more you benefit from Social Security, because it's an annuity play. So
hey, I'm never afraid to take some money back from the government on that one, because people paid into it and they deserve that. The people that want money for nothing is one thing, but Social Security, they hit us for 8% plus matching with the government, 16% all our lives. If we could just put all that money into our IRA instead of Social Security, we'd all be better off. The problem is the government forces us to pay it their way, and then they pay it back in meager little amounts. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have. That's why I'm a big proponent of making sure that people put as much money away as early as possible, invest it wisely and conservatively, and just let it grow during their lifetime.
One quick question that might be relevant to some of our younger viewers: Roth IRA or 401k? If you have a choice, any thoughts which is better?
Well, I think the general conventional wisdom is it depends on your income bracket at the time. The higher you are, the more money you make and the more money you can put away, you want the tax deduction. Okay, so when you're early in life and you're making your big income, you want to take the traditional IRA because you get a tax deduction immediately, but understand you're now going to get taxed when you withdraw it later in life. But then again, you're at a lower income bracket. On the other hand, if you're in the lower income bracket and the tax deduction is really not going to do you any good, then what you want to do is choose the Roth IRA and allow that money to grow as much as possible, because you'll have a much larger nest egg at the end. And when you take it out, it's tax free. So you end up much better off if you follow one or the other of those two strategies. But it does vary from person to person a little bit. Beyond that, you should check with your financial advisor.
That's great. Bill Hudak, not only a lawyer and an expert in retirement planning, but also an optimist and a person who's preaching hope and a path forward for people. So you're not stuck, folks. You're not stuck. It's never too late to start doing the right thing. Hey, Bill, I want to thank you for coming onto the show today. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Sidebar. Judge Dan Winslow signing off. Make sure you all do justice. Thanks all. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for having me, Dan.